I hope you know what you're doing!
She's on the way.
I see her.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody. My name is Kevin.
My name is Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies and TV shows. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Ahsoka, Part 3, Time to Fly. Hera tangles with the New Republic politics while Ahsoka and Sabine Wren voyage to a distant planet. All right, guys, so I think we've seen a continuation of the story, at least for Ahsoka, which is always good to see. Based on our previous thoughts, we had some misgivings with some of the acting, just maybe a little bit of the direction to some extent, some of the characterization we've seen from characters we knew and loved from the Rebel series into live action. I would say not much has changed. I think the acting is still as dead inside as I would argue as it's been since the beginning of this series and episode 3. So unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to change much going down the line. I really wish it would. Unfortunately, I think this stilted acting is just something we're going to have to deal with. So that being said, I'm not going to talk too much about it. It is what it is. So that expect that going forward. The rest of it, though, I thought it was okay, for the most part. Dave Filoni, obviously, you can tell he has a strong grasp of Star Wars and what people kind of look for in Star Wars, even if they're beats that we've seen before at this point. So I would say overall, I think this episode was pretty decent and actually gave us some of something I've been looking forward in Star Wars, which we haven't really seen, is some more spaceship battles. We actually got a really nice battle scene in this movie, and I thought that was kind of refreshing. And you know what? For a TV show budget, I think it looked actually really good. I thought it actually kind of lived up to some of the expectations I was hoping for. Adam, talk to me a little bit about this episode. What did you think?
It was good. I think the first half was a little lackluster, but it definitely picked up towards the end, I think.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think the pacing is definitely also an issue in this show where I'm not sure. I think the good thing is Dave Filoni, he's writing it to where, well, I should say this. I guess when you write a script, you want to make sure every episode matters to the script. You never want an episode to feel like nothing happens at all, because I think that's a failure as a TV show, and it's a failure for a viewer when they're watching something. Dave Filoni, even though it's kind of moving a little bit at a snail's pace here and there, at least we get to something. There's a reason for this episode to exist. So there's a reason, like we see Sabine training, learning, like, oh, she might be force sensitive, she might not be. We're trying to still kind of figure that whole situation out, and we're getting the main characters onto the planet where Balin is with the dark witches and everything. So again, there is a reason for A to get to B. So I think that's important. Is it interesting though? I think maybe there's another discussion for that. But Julie, how about you? What did you think of this episode?
I feel like it was fine. Kind of, I guess par for the course with what we've been given so far. I feel like it didn't rock the boat too much either way. Like Adam said, the beginning half of the episode was definitely slower. I did like the training sequence though between Ahsoka and Sabine. I thought that was nice. I like, when she was doing it, Ahsoka's just like, you'd be dead. Because you're just not good. I will say, and again, this is just me coming with no background knowledge, really. In the scene when Hera's talking to that council and talking about the war and Thrawn and how deadly he was, like, I feel no fear. I feel, because I don't have the context. So again, like, I just wish they had done something where I could feel like, man, Thrawn is a scary dude and we need to be worried about him. Right now, it's just kind of in the ether, Right.
And I think that's still this show's biggest problem, is if you have no context of Rebels, you have no idea, what Thrawn means or what's coming. Adam, do you still think that's a big disconnect for the audience? Because even as someone who's watched it, I kind of still feel that way too, to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's still more characters that, new characters to the show, but obviously they're not new characters if you've seen Rebels.
Hmm.
But all of these characters that keep being introduced and we don't get any context as to who they are, and I'm just like, oh wait, who is that
Right.
again? And all these other, I know they've seen Rebels, they're just so disconnected from it.
Right, and I think also that there's also another big reveal in that scene, and if you have no context of Rebels, then again, you probably have no care in the world of what that's about. We get to see Hera's son, who was with Kanan, was his son before he died, who was Ezra's teacher, and if you know about that, great, that's a really exciting little pop there. We get to see his, her son, and see that he's still alive, and he might be another potential Force-sensitive person in the future. But again, without context, right, Adam? I don't think there's really any reason to pop for that besides seeing a boy with green hair kind of pop up in the scene. I don't think it
Yeah,
does
it's just
much
kind of
for
like,
you.
yeah, whatever. Whatever. Yeah, all right. Yeah, another, potential Jedi.
Yeah,
Cool.
sure. Yeah, no big deal, right? And I think that's a lot to the failure of this show, because I think Diana Lee Onsanto, I think that's how you say her name. She plays Morgan Elsbeth. I think she's actually pretty terrifying, and there's actually a few scenes here, and it's funny because I completely forgot until we started talking about it last time. She was in Mandalorian. That was actually her connection. She was actually in the Mandalorian as the one woman Ahsoka captures in the town where she's kind of running that town and running like these illegal smuggling operations and stuff like that. So there was some connections to her previously, which I think that's kind of cool. But she's like a really great actress, and she's a really intimidating threat. And her, along with Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati, I think it's really important like that. You know what I mean? And Julie's laughing because there's a meme on the internet for those who don't know about Shin Hati. She's Shin Hati, so if that's your thing, thumbs up, good for you. Again, I think these characters, the villains, I think by far are the most interesting characters in this whole entire show. And even when we get to the Starfight scene, I thought that was pretty interesting. We got to see kind of a little bit of throwback, I think, to like old school Star Wars, where you have Sabine kind of jump into the gunner's seat, kind of blasting away at the ships. Adam, what did that do for you? Did that kind of give you back a little bit of nostalgia into some of the stuff we love about Star Wars?
Yeah, I guess it's because of the whole first half of the episode has, a lot of the politics of Star Wars in there. And a lot of it's been, I don't know, it feels like it's been done before, especially in the Star Wars universe. Like, I'm like, all right.
Well, we're always
same
complaining about the same
conversation.
thing, right?
Exactly, right? So this has all been done before. But then all of a sudden we get the transition. We're doing space battles, and Ahsoka's out there flipping with her lightsaber, and it's just like, wow, this is amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool because we haven't really seen too much of that kind of thing done in Star Wars, where
It's
she's
very unique. It's a
she's in
very
a
unique
spacesuit
scene.
and she's like deflecting and trying to draw attention as they're trying to rev up the engine again. Sabine's trying to fix the ship. Again, very cool idea and a very action-pack orientated scene. Kind of just hung down by all this kind of other stuff, which I think it kind of leads me to believe, and I think you guys will agree, this never should have been a TV show. I think there's really a bigger evidence that this should have just been a movie. I think that would have been probably the more interesting route this could have taken, because to some extent it does, again, even though I do compliment it for adding to the plot and moving everything forward, it feels a little bit like it's filling for time at times. I don't really need all this big, long explanation as to what's going on. Julie, do you get that feeling when you watch, especially this episode in particular?
Yeah, definitely. And then when you really think of like the perspective, like after, I guess this coming week, the newest episode that will be dropping will already be halfway through the series.
Right.
So I feel like there hasn't been enough forward momentum to really like, where are we all heading, and how are we going to get there? Again, it's still early. I mean, halfway, a lot could happen in another 5 episodes. But it's definitely slower with also for me coming in with nothing. Like I feel like I'm not gaining much more knowledge either.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just a lot of this is fan service, and there's nothing inherently wrong with fan service. I know people like to use that as a derogatory term, but I think, again, Dave Filoni's more interested in giving us a little bit more fan service versus maybe a news story, because a lot of this is just kind of overly done plots I think we've seen in Star Wars. But the interesting part is I think the next episode will probably be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more action heavy, I think, than this episode, especially because now our two parties are kind of coming together. The villains are going to come across now with the heroes, so I think we're going to have something a little more interesting coming our way, if anything's to be believed. Also, another interesting thing, and I want to talk to you guys about just, before we wrap up this video, since it's pretty short, really, there's not too much to talk about. The identity of Marek has been an interesting topic of the online sphere right now. Marek is the other apprentice that's been with Shin, who's been, on, and he wears a mask, obviously. Guys have any ideas? I've heard a couple wild ones that someone said it might be Ezra, might be the one under the mask. I don't think that's the case, but Adam, how about you? You have any idea, maybe, if you're looking into some backwards rebel lore there, who it could be?
I don't know. Maybe it's just the younger self that was like, maybe it's Starkiller under there.
Right, something crazy.
And that would be so cool. But I don't know. I really have no clue. I mean, I think Starkiller would be pretty cool, but I guess maybe I really just want the video game universe to be in Star Wars.
I do too. And I think they're leaning towards that. I think there seems to be some kind of connections there. I think especially with the most recent video game series, I think they are kind of drawing some lines, connective tissue. So I look forward to that. Julie, how about you? Any ideas? I know your expansive knowledge there isn't the highest. But,
yes, I think it's a young clone of Palpatine.
Somehow, Palpatine's back.
Somehow, they cloned a young version of Palpatine. Yeah, maybe it's Cameron. What's his face from the video game?
No, I don't think so.
This is Jar Jar's Sith path.
Yeah. It's interesting, but again, I think once again, this kind of leads to more. The villains are just way more interesting than the heroes at this point. We have a mystery villain who we don't have any idea who the identity is. We got a master and apprentice who are pretty cool, and then like an overseer Palpatine type character who she's very menacing in her own right. And again, I think what they're doing is just way more interesting than what the heroes are doing. So with all that being said, let's wrap this up, guys. Let's put a big number on it. I'm going to give Ahsoka Part 3, Time to Fly, a 7 out of 10.
And complete. Oh, took my battery back up a while to cycle, I suppose. What did I miss?
We almost died multiple times.
Ah, yes. Standard operating procedure.
It's fine. I think the spaceship battle is probably the most interesting part of the episode. I do agree with Adam in a lot of ways where I think this just was like the slower. I think of all the episodes we've seen before, just the beginning kind of leaves a little to be desired, but once we get into the action of this episode, and it really feels like Star Wars, and not to say that even the training segment, using the Zatoshi the Blind Swordsman, using that aspect of the training, I think that's really cool, and that's stuff I do like to see in Star Wars, especially kind of that lore building from past Star Wars projects we've seen. But at the end of the day, it's really kind of fan service, so if you're a Star Wars fan, I think you'll get a kick out of it. Is the plot going anywhere? We'll have to see. I think there is a great mystery still, and I think we are something to look forward to in the next episode. Adam, what'd you think of this episode?
I am going to give Ahsoka episode 3. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 as well.
Now!
I just really liked the uniqueness of the ending battle scene.
Right.
Because that's just, there's so many things in Star Wars that we've seen over and over again. And I think I was like, wow, that's actually really cool. I would love to see more clever scenes like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the one redeeming quality. I think we actually we saw a different, for the show, a different side of Ahsoka that she's been in, with Rebels and whatnot. So I enjoyed seeing a little bit more personality out of her. So yeah, I think I'd stick with the 7.
Yeah, and it's funny, for a show that's called Ahsoka, I feel like her involvement could be like, neither here nor there at some point in the show.
Yeah.
But her at the end, I think, we got to see that fun Ahsoka that we kind of knew a little bit about, where she was willing to think outside the box and do something a little bit more different. And that's kind of what her character is known for. So I hope they do kind of try to bring back that trend a little bit. Julie, how about you? What did you think of this one?
I'm going to be giving Ahsoka episode 3 a 7 out of 10 as well.
Anger and frustration are quick to give power, but they also unbalance you. Let's go again.
It was just fine. I feel like I'm just kind of like tagging along for the ride. Hoping things will click into place for me eventually. If not, I feel like I have some homework that I need to, do some catch up on.
Yeah, and that's the toughest part, especially when you introduce a series. I think the biggest failure of this show, and I think it probably will be the continued failure of this show, is just introducing new audiences to its source material. And we've kind of seen that, especially with some of the Marvel films and stuff like that. Disney right now, their idea of forcing content is you have to watch all the content. You need to know all of the content. I used to be a believer of that, I think, to some extent, especially a younger, maybe more inexperienced viewer in my past, where I would be obsessed with something and I'd have to watch everything and know everything about it. But later in age, where I want to just enjoy content and have a good time, I find it harder to involve myself when I don't have hours upon hours and days upon days to consume every little morsel of content just to understand a simple plot line. And, I'm curious to see what will happen in the future, even after this show. Maybe there'll be a course correction for Disney to try and readjust this a little bit, because, again, I think there is something enjoyable here, but unless you know everything, you're kind of missing out. So anyway, that being said, tune in for the next episode. Let us know in the comments below what you guys thought of Ahsoka Part 3. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Do you like spaceship battles? Is Shin Hati your favorite character? Let us know in the comments below. But that being said, thank you guys all so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That's Adam and Julie. We are your real movie guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.